Good evening and welcome to the Granada Forum. We're a popular assembly educating in the areas of politics and health. This evening we welcome back for the second time guest speaker Tom DeWeese. He is editor of the DeWeese Report, a monthly political newsletter. He is also president of the American Policy Center, a suburban Washington, D.C. activist group he founded in 1988. His topic will be the climate change protocol that Bill Clinton is scheduled to sign this coming December in Kyoto, Japan. This is a legally binding UN-sponsored treaty that will tie the United States to what some call unreasonable and dangerous restrictions on American industry and personal liberties. Mr. DeWeese will be discussing these dangers and present a plan of action to stop it. Now please join me in a nice warm welcome for Mr. Tom DeWeese.
I love California. I love coming out here, and I love being at the Granada Forum. So tonight, I'm going to give it to you with both barrels. Let me start out by saying there is no global warming, period. You can't find a scientist anywhere in the world who can look you in the eye and without hesitation, without clarification, without saying kinda, mighta, sorta, if and or but, that yes, there is global warming. There is no evidence whatsoever to support such claims. There is no global warming. Anyone who tells you that scientific research shows warming trends, be they teachers, newscasters, congressmen, senators, vice presidents, or presidents, is wrong. There is no global warming. Now, what are the true temperature trends? Scientific research through U.S. government satellite and balloon measurements shows that the temperature is actually cooling, very slightly, 0.037 degrees Celsius. A little more research into modern-day temperature trends kind of bears this out. For example, in 1936, in the Midwest of the country where I'm from, the Midwest of the United States experienced 49 consecutive days of temperatures over 90 degrees. There were another 49 consecutive days in 1955. But in 1992, there was only one day over 90 degrees. And in 1997, this year, only 5. Now, because of modern science and improved equipment, this cooling trend has been most accurately documented over the last 18 years. Ironically, that's the same period of time that the hysteria over dire warnings of warming have occurred. Now you see why the global warming advocates are telling you that time is short. They have only a short time to sell you on the idea of global warming before you all start wearing winter coats year-round. Changes in global warming temperatures, or in global temperatures, are natural. There is no proof that temperature is affected by anything that man has done. Changes in fact, in recent severe weather that we've been having have been directly attributed to a natural phenomenon that occurs called El Nino. It causes ocean temperatures to rise as tropical trade winds actually reverse for a time. The resulting temperature changes cause severe storms, flooding, and even drought on every single continent on Earth. It is completely natural. El Nino has been wreaking havoc across the globe since long before man arrived. But how about those reports that the polar ice cap is melting? Well, it is. It has been, in fact, for about 1 million years. We are at the end of an ice age in which glaciers covered most of North America and Northern Europe. But of course, there's at least one environmentalist named Al Gore who is panicking over the possibility that we may soon lose Glacier National Park in Montana because the ice is melting. I hate to tell Al that we've already lost the glacier that used to cover the entire country, including Los Angeles. Perhaps, and if I know Al, I know he will, start working for new regulations from the Interior Department to begin immediately restoring that lost historical environmental treasure. Because, you know, reestablishing a sheet of ice that would cover the entire continent would certainly satisfy Al's desire to stop mining, timber cutting, and urban sprawl. The truth is, someday, humans may be able to take tropical vacations at the North Pole, and it will be perfectly natural. Temperatures go up, temperatures go down. There used to be a local radio weatherman in my hometown of Newark, Ohio, who introduced the weather on his program by saying, "Whether it's cold or whether it's hot, we'll always have weather, whether or not." And so we do. Yet, our world is being flooded with the dire predictions of global warming. The President of the United States has announced that global warming is now a scientific fact. Headlines in newspapers and magazines proclaim that global warming is no longer in doubt. Children's textbooks are full of dire predictions. Policy is being dictated, treaties are being written, and lives are being changed in order to stop global warming. We are being warned of killer heat waves, the spread of tropical disease, and vast flooding. Ocean levels are rising, they say. America's coastlines are doomed, they tell us, and Louisiana will drown. Hurricanes and tornadoes have already become more violent, we are warned. Floods and droughts have begun to ravage the nation, they cry. And any changes in temperatures, an excessive storm or extended flooding, is looked upon as a sure sign that environmental Armageddon is here. Diabolical environmentalists even are using the El Nino phenomenon, the natural El Nino phenomenon, to whip people into the global warming hysteria. But of course, we are assured by the White House that scientists are sounding these warnings and that we have only one chance to stop it. Well, as the debate rages, we find that there really are two kinds of scientists. There are those who look at facts and make their judgments based on what they know. Their findings can be matched by any other scientist using the same data and set of circumstances to reach the same conclusions. It's an age-old practice called peer reviewing, and it's the only true science. And then there are those who yearn for a certain outcome and set about creating the needed data to make it so. Usually, you will find this group of scientists greatly dependent on the grants supplied by those with specific political agendas who demand desired outcomes for their money. Now, let's just take NASA, for example, the most trusted name in American science. A lot of NASA scientists, it appears, have fallen into this trap. Environmental science has become the lifeblood of the space program as the nation has lost interest in space travel. To keep the bucks coming, NASA has justified shuttle trips through the use of Earth-directed environmental research, and the budgets keep coming. At the same time, many of NASA's scientists come with a political outlook in great harmony with those who advocate the green agenda, and they're not above using their position to aid that agenda whenever the chance is available. That was never more clearly demonstrated in 1992 when a team of 3 NASA scientists were monitoring conditions over North America to determine if the ozone layer was in danger. Inconclusive data indicated that conditions might be right for ozone damage over North America if certain things happened, etc., etc., etc. Now, true scientists are a careful lot. They study, they wait, and many times they test again before drawing conclusions. Not so the Green Zealot. Of this 3-member NASA team, 2 could not be sure of what they had found and wanted to do more research. But 1 took the data and rushed to the microphones and with all the drama of a Hollywood movie announced in hushed tones that NASA had discovered an ozone hole over North America. Then Senator Al Gore rushed to the floor of the Senate, and with the news, he drove a stampede to immediately ban Freon, 5 years before Congress had intended and without a suitable substitute. He then bullied George Bush to sign the legislation saying the ozone hole was over Kennebunkport, Bush's vacation home. 2 months later, NASA announced on the back pages of the newspapers that further research had shown that there was no such damage. Remember that when you have to buy a new air conditioner or a refrigerator for no other reason than that the Freon has run out on the old one. And the late Carl Sagan was another leading voice in the environmental Chicken Little detail. Probably the most famous scientific name since Albert Einstein, Sagan gained fame for his very popular television show on astronomy. But Carl Sagan knew very little about the environment. The science of climatology is far different from astronomy. Yet there he was on CNN in the talk show circuit, adding his authoritative opinion on issues he knew nothing about. But boy, did he sound good. Remember his dire predictions of a massive cloud of smoke that would encircle the earth and block the sun as a result of the oil fires started by Saddam Hussein in Kuwait? Dr. Sagan told us that the world would be plunged into darkness perhaps for as much as 6 months. He said crops would fail and worldwide starvation might face us. And he also reported that the oil that Saddam had poured into the Persian Gulf would be an irreparable environmental disaster that would destroy the Persian Gulf. None of these things happened. But Carl was an expert. And then there are those computer models. Night after night, you and I watch the local news as the weatherman predicts what kind of day tomorrow will be. These meteorologists, using the most up-to-date equipment, boldly give you the 5-day forecast. But it's well known. Even with all the research and expensive equipment, it really is just a best guess. There are just too many variables. If the wind picks up here, it could start a storm. If the temperature drops there, it could start to snow. The earth is a vast and wondrous place. Weather does what it wants. Yet those who are promoting the global warming scam have the audacity to tell you they can forecast changes in the climate decades into the future. The truth is, computer models are able to include only 2 out of 14 components that make up the climate system. To include the 3rd component would take a computer 1,000 times faster than we now have. To go beyond the 3rd component of 14 requires an increase in computer power that is so large, only mathematicians can comprehend the numbers. And moreover, even if the computer power existed, scientists do not understand all the factors and the relationships between them that determines global climate. So it is an outrage for Al Gore, Bill Clinton, and the Sierra Club to tell you that global warming is a fact and that we Americans must suffer dire changes in our lifestyle to stop it. And so, too, is it an outrage for Al Gore to tell you that most true scientists now agree that global warming is a fact. What he doesn't tell you is that almost 500 scientists from around the world signed a document called the Heidelberg Appeal in 1992, just prior to the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, expressing doubts and begging the delegates not to bind the world to any dire treaties based on global warming. And today, the number of scientists who have signed on to the Heidelberg Appeal has grown to 4,000. He doesn't tell you that a recent Gallup poll of eminent North American climatologists shows that 83% of them debunk the global warming theory. And the deceit knows no bounds. The United Nations released a report at the end of 1995 saying global warming was a fact. That report has been used by the Greens to spread their global warming panic worldwide. Yet before releasing that report, At least 2 key paragraphs were deleted from the final draft. These 2 paragraphs, written by the scientists who actually did the scientific analysis, said, quote, number 1, none of the studies above has shown clear evidence that we can attribute the observed climate changes to increases in greenhouse gases. 2, quote, no study to date has positively attributed all or part of the climate change to man-made causes. Global warming is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the people of the world, bar none. But of course, the natural question is why? And I will answer you, power. Those of us who have been fighting the green agenda have been warning that modern-day environmentalism has nothing whatsoever to do with protecting the environment. Rather, it is a political movement led by those who seek to control the world economies, dictate development, and redistribute the world's wealth. They use the philosophical base of Karl Marx, the tactics of Adolf Hitler, and the rhetoric of the Sierra Club. The American people have been assaulted from all directions by rabid environmentalists. School children have been told that recycling is a matter of life and death. Businesses have been shut down. Valuable products like Freon have been removed from the marketplace. Chemicals and pesticides that help to make this nation the safest and healthiest on earth are targeted for extinction. Our entire nation is being restructured to fit the proper green mold, all of it for a lie about something that doesn't exist. But my friends, the lie is about to grow to massive proportions, and the game is about to get very serious indeed. In December of this year, Bill Clinton will travel to Kyoto, Japan to sign a legally binding document, a United Nations treaty called the Climate Change Protocol. The sole argument for this treaty is that global warming is a fact and that we must take severe action to stop it. Right now, the Clinton administration is bombarding the airways with a sales pitch. Conferences are being held in cities across the country. Special reports, magazine articles, and documentaries are being used to pound home the message: global warming is here and we must stop it. Clinton even went into a school recently and shamelessly used those students' innocent faces to drive home the message. He asked them to, quote, make global warming a gripping national issue. The man should be arrested for child abuse. But the most offensive assault on the expression of free thought by the American people as the administration drives to sell you this snake oil was committed by Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt. Babbitt said that anyone opposed to the fight to stop global warming was un-American. He accused those of us who oppose the climate change treaty of engaging in a, quote, conspiracy to hire pseudoscientists to deny the facts. So now, according to Bruce Babbitt, to disagree with the Clinton administration is tantamount to treason. Well, if that is so, then tonight, I guess that's what I'm going to commit. Because I'm going to tell you exactly what is in this treaty, its true purpose, and what it will do to this nation and to your life. All the stuff that Bruce and Bill and Al don't want you to know. So Bruce, then Timmy Worth. Bruce, do with me as you will. The Climate Change Protocol is a legally binding international treaty through which signing nations agree to cut back their energy emissions to 15% below 1990 levels. And the treaty says it is to accomplish this goal by as early as the year 2010. That means all of the energy growth in this nation since 1990 would be rolled back plus 15% more in just 12 years.
Yes, there are negotiations, debates, arguments taking place over the exact terms of the treaty as we speak. Perhaps the final version won't be so severe, but it doesn't matter. Such a massive disruption in the American economy, particularly since it has nothing to do with protecting the environment, will devastate this nation. To meet such drastically reduced energy standards will, in the short run, cost the United States over 1 million jobs. Some estimate it will cost over 7 million in 14 years. If the treaty sends the economy into a tailspin, as many predict, it will cost even more. It will cost the average family $1,000 to $4,000 per year in increased energy costs. The cost of food will skyrocket. It has been estimated that in order for the United States to meet such a goal, the U.S. gross domestic product will be reduced by $200 billion annually. To force down energy use, the federal government will have to use massive energy taxes that will drive up the cost of heating your home by as much as 30 to 40%. In all likelihood, there will be taxes on gasoline as high as 60 cents a gallon. There will be consumption taxes and carbon taxes. The purpose of these punitive costs is to drive up the cost of modern living in order to force you to drastically change your lifestyle. That is the diabolical plan behind this restructuring scheme. Every single product that is produced with the use of energy will increase in price, including things like aspirin, contact lenses, toothpaste. Yet just recently, Bill Clinton told those same school children that compliance to the treaty will not hurt the economy. He said he can, quote, grow the economy and do right by the environment. After he said it, his White House staff told reporters they didn't know where he got that idea. Because to date, the Clinton administration has refused to release an economic impact analysis on the effect of the treaty. Wonder why? But a leaked study by the Department of Energy's Argonne Laboratory finds that the treaty will cripple 6 U.S. industries, including paper, steel, petroleum refining, chemical manufacturing, aluminum, and cement. That about sums up the economy. When Clinton is through complying with this treaty, you may find yourself sitting in a dark house after lights have been ordered off early in the evening, unable to drive your car because of gas shortages, unable to walk to the shopping mall because stores will be ordered closed after dark, even if you have a job and money. But perhaps you're still not convinced. Maybe you still cling to the idea that such a drastic action is necessary, that our president and those UN delegates are really in a panic over global warming and are trying to find an honest solution. Then ask yourself why the treaty will only bind developed nations to its draconian emission levels. You see, only developed industrial nations will be bound by the treaty. Undeveloped third world nations will be free to produce whatever they want. These will include China, India, Brazil, and Mexico. And guess what? 82% of the projected emissions growth in coming years is coming from these countries. Now tell me, if the climate change protocol is all about protecting the environment, then how's come it doesn't cover everybody? The truth, of course, is that this treaty is really about redistribution of the wealth. The wealth of the United States is and has always been the target. The new scheme to grab the loot is through environmental scare tactics. If today you were to attend a UN session on the climate change protocol, and I have associates who do, you will find yourself in a discussion with excited delegates from third world countries. They will make comments to you like, when the technology transfer takes place, my country will produce this item or that item. Translation: when the United States is stupid enough to fall for this scheme, we will take up the slack and get rich. and international corporations who owe allegiance to no nation will bolt this nation and move their factories lock, stock, and computer chip to those third world countries where they will be free to carry out their production. But that means the same emissions will be coming out of the jungles of South America instead of Chicago. So where is the protection of the environment? You see, it's really not about that, is it? Still not convinced. One more thing. Hidden in the small print of this treaty is a provision that calls for the, quote, harmonizing of patent laws. Now, robbing a nation of its patent protection is an interesting tactic for protecting the environment, don't you think? Bill Clinton, pushed by Al Gore and the massive Green lobby, is determined to sign this treaty. The war has been engaged. Industry is finally beginning to wake up to the terrifying threat of the green monster it has helped to create. For the past 3 decades, industry has given in to every outrageous green demand, and it has fueled the monster by filling green coffers with massive tax-deductible donations. Now industry finds itself trapped. But more frightening is the fact that many prominent proponents of property rights and limited government still fail to see the danger in the treaty. I have been told by people that you know and respect that there is no danger. The Senate will never ratify that treaty, they say. They point out to me that in a vote of 95 to nothing, the U.S. Senate rejected in a non-binding resolution the climate change protocol. That overwhelming vote, they say, will stop Clinton in his tracks. My friends, the resolution was presented by Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia. He, along with Congressman John Dingell of Michigan, have led the opposition against the treaty. Republican leadership so far has remained silent. It is commendable that Senator Byrd and Congressman Dingell have taken the lead to do something to protect American rights. But Senator Byrd and Congressman Dingell, both established liberal Democrats, have based their opposition solely on the fact that only industrial nations are tied to this treaty. That's not fair, they say, so they oppose the treaty as now written. Apparently, based on the vote of Senator Byrd's non-binding resolution, it is the sense of the Senate that if Americans must be enslaved, then it's only fair for the rest of the world to share our misery. Because not once have they said the whole concept is wrong. Not once have they challenged the validity of the science that is based on the supposed fact of global warming. Is this then the wall of defense that we are supposed to hide behind? Are we now to entrust the very future of the Republic on the shoulders of Senator Byrd and Congressman Dingell? That appears to be the current wisdom of our leaders on Capitol Hill. And you and I know what will happen next. The story is all too familiar. Very soon, Clinton will summon Congressman Dingell and Senator Byrd to the White House and offer them some sort of compromise. Everyone will smile for the cameras, and the Republicans, overwhelmed by the spirit of bipartisanship, will give away the store. And I'll bet they feel a lot of love in that room. So Bill Clinton is moving full speed ahead with his plan to travel to Kyoto, Japan this December to sign the climate change protocol. And when he does, and after the Senate rushes to ratify it, the final blow will have been struck. The United States of America will begin a long, agonizing descent, strangled by its own hand. Some say we'll fight it in the Senate. Well, in fact, we may not get a chance to fight it in the Senate. Just before I left Washington, I got a report from Henry Lamb, who has been there in Bonn on the negotiations, and he said this: Bonn negotiators met the Senate resolution with deafening silence. Not a word was said about the Senate action in any of the public meetings. Corridor intelligence, however, reported a private meeting arranged by Chairman Raul Estrada of Argentina between a U.S. and a Chinese delegate. The unreported outcome is an agreement to a scenario in which the U.S. delegation will sign the protocol in Kyoto but withhold it from the Senate until after the next election or next two elections in hopes of getting a more receptive U.S. Senate. Such a scenario will allow the Clinton-Gore administration to avoid the risk of Senate rejection while continuing to implement restrictive regulations administratively, which effectively implements the provisions of the protocol without Senate ratification. That is exactly what they have done with the Biodiversity Treaty. The question before us tonight is, can we stop them? And more importantly, will we even try? Many in our own movement don't believe we can. In fact, some have begun to question our own ideals. Some of our strongest leaders, both in the movement and in the Republican-led Congress, have begun to seek common ground with those who are driving the agenda to take our liberties and our property. We're told that we can't even mention the environmental agenda as a negative, that we need a new Republican environmental vision with which to lock arms with our enemies in hope of finding peace in our time. They simply don't believe the principles of our founding fathers are relevant in this day and age. They don't believe that liberty can survive. You know, there was another time in history when the forces of freedom doubted their ability to survive. In 1939, Adolf Hitler and his Nazis were taking the world by storm. A great deal of Europe had already fallen under its power. There were pro-Nazi rallies in Madison Square Garden in New York City. There were pro-Nazi movements on the march in South America and in South Africa. To many of the leaders of the free world, it seemed that Hitler's nightmare was a done deal, that there was no way to stop it. These men were diplomats who made deals based on the fat of the day and the meandering whims of the public. They knew nothing of the meaning of liberty or the principles of property. These men thought they could deal with the devil, even though the devil knew that they stood for nothing but the deal, that there was no line that couldn't be crossed. And so Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of the once powerful British Empire, derby and black umbrella in hand, flew onto Adolf Hitler's turf to negotiate for mercy. He hoped to get some sort of a deal that would allow the free nations to survive in a world controlled by cold-blooded brutes. And Hitler smiled and invited him to sit at his table and sign such an agreement. And as Chamberlain told cheering crowds that he had achieved peace in our time, Hitler was attacking Poland. And Chamberlain let him do it, because to do otherwise would have cost him his place at the table. So today, you and I face a similar crossroads. We see our enemy on all sides, and we have experienced few victories. And we also have some leaders among us in our own movement, in the Congress, in our state houses, even in our county and local offices, who say we have no choice but to compromise, find mutual ground, stop rocking the boat, above all appear reasonable, to get a place at the table with the big boys. To continue to fight, they say, will only be divisive against reasonable negotiations. My friends, had Winston Churchill accepted Neville Chamberlain's view of the world, you and I wouldn't be here tonight discussing property rights, liberty, and free enterprise. There would be none. Instead of wringing his hands and crying for mercy, Churchill told his countrymen there would be no more compromise. He said, we shall fight them on the land, on the sea, and in the air. He said the enemy would only take his small, tiny island of England when all of us lay on the beaches choking in our own blood. He vowed a fight to the finish because Winston Churchill's enemy threatened to change his world forever. So does ours. We are not engaged in a political debate. This is a war. We face a dedicated revolutionary foe who cares not one whit about your wants, your needs, or your rights. So what can we compromise? What peace can we hope to find in a massive group hug as they place the knife cleanly between our shoulder blades? There is no compromise for property, liberty, or truth. But because Americans have already allowed our liberties to slip away, through regulations and taxes and green scares, our nation has begun to deteriorate. We've already seen what wrong-headed federal control and regulations have done to our once proud nation. The core of our cities, once vibrant and alive, with men who understood that man's progress was his greatest achievement, are now slipping into silent decay. Vital services are beginning to break down. Is this the result of men entrusted with too much freedom? Or is it the result of the looter mentality of those who loathe industry and technology? Many of our great factories in the Northeast lie in rusting ruins. Is this the result of capitalism run amok? Or is it the result of rules and regulations designed by modern-day Robin Hoods who seek to drain the wealth out of the producers and give it to the sniveling whiners who believe that our duty on earth is to give them an unearned living? How? How can America protect the environment if it is turned into a poor and primitive third world society? Such is the philosophy of death. Is this the compromise they seek? Only man's forward motion with the constant emergence of new technologies, along with the guaranteed protection of property rights, will create the sound, safe society we all seek. Turning our nation backwards to the days before Christopher Columbus, as radical environmentalists advocate, is an insanity that should be laughed out of the hall wherever it is uttered. Yet this is the root of the philosophy with which our most trusted Republican leaders seek to compromise. True science proves their chicken little horror stories are unfounded. True science proves that man is the hero, not the cancer of the earth. True science proves that man's technology and man's stewardship of privately owned land is the only true environmental protection. Why compromise truth? Why accept a lie? There is no compromise for property, liberty, or truth, not now, not ever. The truth is, the radical environmental movement has declared war on your property, war on your livelihood, war on your families, and war on truth and logic. How will you fight back? And let me take just a moment to say, before I go on, I do not advocate, I do not believe in, and I won't partake in violence. When I am talking about fighting, I'm talking about political action and only political action. So any of our green friends who want to pin that on me, I'm sorry, but it's not true. But how will you fight back? By seeking some common ground, by using the non-confrontational whimpering employed by the Republican leaders in Congress who say it's not politically feasible to take on the environmental agenda. Voters might not understand, they say. Can you imagine Thomas Jefferson trying to hide the fact that his real purpose was liberty? I know he could have said, let's just tell them we don't like tea. We can only win the hearts and minds of the American people by telling them the truth. The truth is, we built this nation through private ownership of the land. They said there is no such thing as private property. We created the means of production to bring on the most advanced nation on earth. They have now regulated our production almost out of existence. We said that sound private ownership of the range and the forests was the proper management. They've now kicked us off, and the land suffers for it. Competition, technology, and private ownership are the foundations of sound environmental protection and the basis of our very society. Which ones will you give up? Which ones will you compromise away in the name of some undefined higher good? The truth is, all of that is what Bill Clinton intends to sign away with a stroke of a pen in Kyoto, Japan in December of this year. Our nation, as we build it, as we have known it, as we love it, will begin to disappear. Not overnight. These guys are too clever for that. There are re-elections to be considered. But over a number of years, industry, goods and services, necessities, and yes, luxuries of our mighty society will begin to disappear as America joins the ranks of the common folk who inhabit a global village of misery. Your children and your grandchildren will never know the lofty dreams and ideals that you and I took for granted as our American birthright. These will be lost in the rhetoric of the struggle for survival in the age of common need. You see, the future, as envisioned by Bill and Hillary and Al and the rest of their ilk, will not be, of course, an age of capitalism or even an age of communism, but an age of commonism. Common borders, common currencies, common government, common property, common misery. The culmination of all that the left has worked toward will come together on that winter day in Kyoto, Japan, as Bill Clinton puts pen to paper and signs the climate change protocol. And from that day forward, America's technology, its factories, and its future will begin an exodus through the most diabolical wealth redistribution scheme ever devised. Lenin, Stalin, and Hitler were amateurs compared to these guys. The American people, scared out of their wits over visions of the coming global warming holocaust, will applaud. Congress will capitulate, and liberty will die. And you and I can't stop them. At least, not by fighting in our usual manner. All of you have fought hard. Many of you have given way beyond the call of duty of your time, your money, and your hearts. The causes you work for are desperate battles. All are vital to preserving our freedoms. You fight to stop abortion. You fight to stop illegal immigration. You fight to stop the massive growth of federal government and its oppressive taxes. You fight to stop outcome-based education and Goals 2000 so that you can save your children and their future. You fight to stop the United Nations, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Forest Service, the Park Service, the Army Corps of Engineers from taking your property and your jobs. You fight to stop Bill and Hillary's socialist health care. You fight against the ignorance and the bias of the news media. And now you even have to fight your own leaders of your own movement, along with the elected officials who you put into office who haven't got the guts to stand up for what is right. No wonder you're exhausted. The left has set out to divide and conquer us, and no matter how hard we fight, it's working. There are only so many hours in a day, so many resources, so many faxes, so many phone calls to Capitol Hill that you can generate. You feel it in your guts, the desperate need to go on, but deep down in your heart, you know we're losing. You and I simply can't beat them this way. What if we change tactics? What if we get off the defense and go on the offense for a change? I have a plan. It's a humble one. I present it to you. Take it as you will. Let's give the news media something they can't ignore. Let's send a message to the White House and Congress so loud and clear that it'll be heard around the world to Kyoto, Japan. If Bill Clinton and his social planning buddies want to shut down the United States of America, then I propose that on the day Bill Clinton travels to Japan for the treaty signing, at 12 noon, for just 1 hour, we help him do it. Let Bill Clinton see what a nation in agony looks like. Let's call a national strike in protest of the climate change protocol, a national strike for liberty. Oh, heck, what do we have to lose? I'm not talking about one of those massive marches on Washington where they're always trying to organize these things. It takes money that we don't have. It takes commitment by thousands of people who haven't the time. That's why we've almost always failed to pull off such a feat. We almost always end up with a small crowd that the media laughs off. I'm talking about a pure grassroots uprising where everyone does something on their own. All of you have worked on campaigns, on issues and candidates. What have you done? You pass out leaflets outside factories and shopping malls. You write letters. You publish newsletters. You know, we have a national network of radio programs, if coordinated, can carry a very powerful message. Now, let's do these things now. with a certain purpose and a targeted date. Let us target the day in December when the treaty is to be signed. At 12 noon, let each of those conservative activist radio programs play the Lee Greenwood song, Proud to be an American, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner. Let that be the signal. On your lunch hour, head for the state capitol or city hall or down the street, wherever you organize a local rally. There you will participate in a peaceful, 1-hour, old-fashioned 4th of July type celebration of liberty. Bring the kids. Strike for your future. If you're a veteran in a group like the American Legion, VFW, Vietnam Vets, put on your uniform, grab the flag, and head down to the rally. Strike for the liberties that you fought for. If you work in a factory, pass out leaflets to your fellow workers. Encourage them to come. You know, the AFL-CIO has come down against this thing. I don't know if it'll hold, but they have. Strike for your jobs. If you're a classic car owner or in a hot rod club, drive your cars to the rally. If Clinton has his way, you soon won't be able to drive them. So strike for your cars. If you're a farmer, drive your tractor to the rally. If the Clinton Treaty becomes law of the land, many of the chemicals and pesticides you need to produce those crops will be banned, and you will lose the farm. Strike for your property. Miners, timber people, fishermen, you've already felt the full wrath of the green assault. Strike back. If for some reason you can't leave the job to attend a rally, then put on a red, white, and blue ribbon or an armband. Wrap a red, white, and blue ribbon around the tree in your front yard. Strike. If you are a retail clerk and have to stay on the job, put on an armband and stand outside the store at 12 noon. But strike! Office workers, go outside the building and do the same thing. Put on armbands. Put ribbons over your office door. Proclaim your support for a strike for liberty. If you're a small businessman, put a sign in your front window that says, "There is no global warming, strike for liberty." If you're a trucker, gas taxes will make it impossible to run your rigs. And all those products that are going to be produced in third world countries will leave you very little to haul. Stop your truck where you are and strike for your jobs. Everyone in this nation, no matter what you do, will lose if this treaty is signed. Say no and strike. At 12 noon, on the day Clinton intends to sign away American liberty, turn on your car lights and start to honk your horn. Flood the White House and Capitol Hill with phone calls. Call your local news media to protest the treaty signing. A jammed switchboard at a media outlet gets reported. Drive past the news media honking your horn. Make it impossible for them to ignore your strike. And while you're driving your car, make sure you boycott British petroleum stations, because that multinational giant has refused to join us and is even running ads in support of the climate change treaty. Strike against British petroleum. Tell them, not in America you won't. For 1 hour of one day, let us all come together, no matter what issue you usually work on, shine a massive spotlight on exactly what Bill Clinton is doing. I believe that others will join us. I believe such a simple protest will catch the imagination of the nation. We don't have to spend massive amounts of money. We don't have to have a rally in Washington, D.C., or we have to leave our homes and our jobs for several days. 1 hour, one day, right where you are, strike. And you know, there are 4 time zones in this country. If we start at 12 noon on the East Coast and we finish at 12 noon on the West Coast, we will have held the nation's attention for 4 full hours. Maybe, as we pass through these time zones, America's natural competitiveness will take hold, and by the time we get to California, the sound of America's blowing horns and shouting no will be deafening. The important thing is, that everyone participate in your own way. Contribute however it fits. Will it work? Can we stop the treaty? I don't know. I certainly know that if we don't do something, it will. And I know that I can't do it alone. I need you to do just what you've always done. Pass out literature, write letters, publish newsletters. If you have a fax or an email alert system, spread the word. If you are one of those groups that can turn out people at rallies, then start to coordinate a local or state rally. One rally on Rally Day, make sure that the phone lines on Capitol Hill and the White House and the local news media are jammed. If you have a contact in local talk radio, bring them on board. This must be a true grassroots uprising. It must be peaceful, and it must be a joyful celebration of liberty, because liberty, the American way, is the solution, not totalitarianism. Truth, not lies. These are the messages we must send to the American people. I believe that if we can rise up and strike a major blow to their agenda, that we will find that it is really built on a very fragile house of cards. They are terrified of you. Strike a blow hard enough, and it may just come down completely. The American people simply don't know what's happening to them. You and I do. To get the message past the news media into American homes that are burdened with 2 working parents who are struggling just to keep it alive, we need to do something drastic. And my organization, the American Policy Center, is prepared to help coordinate this effort, to keep information flowing, and to mark the date for action. But I haven't the funds or the manpower to organize rally in every state or run ads or even appear on every radio and television program that's available to me. You must do these things, as you always have. This is your fight. I'm just somebody with an idea. Maybe we can win. Maybe we can make a lot of noise. You fought hard for liberty. I believe we now face the biggest challenge of our lives. It all comes down to this. Ask yourself, what kind of a world you want to live in 20 years from now? Ask yourself what kind of a world you want for your children and your grandchildren. Ask yourself how you want to answer your child or your grandchild on one day when they sit on your lap and they say to you, what did you do on the day they came for the Constitution of the Republic of the United States of America? Will you say, well, my child, they were too strong. There was nothing I could do. Besides, the American people really didn't want those freedoms anyway. They got what they deserved. Or, when your child asks you what you did when they came for the Constitution of the Republic of the United States, will you look them in the eye and say, I stopped them? The answer is in your hands. There is no global warming. Strike for liberty. Thank you.
That was certainly very stirring and very on target. Now, I'm sure there are questions you must have, so we will have a mic at the back of the room if you care to ask those questions. Oh, sorry, at the side of the room. So if you want to line up and ask your questions, feel free. Thank you, Tom.
Line up over here for questions.
All right. Before we start, let me tell you that my associate, Carolyn Craig, is passing out some papers to you. What we need, if you want to engage in what we're trying to do, I would like to have phone numbers, especially fax numbers or email addresses, so that when we have information to communicate to you, that we can get that out to everybody as possible. So that's what that's for. I've been asked to read this, the 23rd Quam. Bill Clinton is my shepherd, whom I do not want. He maketh me lie down. He maketh lies about green pastures. He leadeth me beside still factories. He restoreth my doubt about the Democratic Party. He leadeth me in the path of socialism for his name's sake. Yea, I will walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I will fear much evil, for he is with me. And Hillary Rodham and her staff, they discomfort me. He prepareth a tax hike for me to give presents to mine enemies. He anointeth my wages with inflation, so that my expenses runneth over my income. Surely poverty and hard times shall follow me all the days of his administration, and I will dwell in a rented HUD house forever. There are some of these in the back.
Okay.
Okay. Say that the atmosphere changed in temperature. It lowered in temperature a couple degrees. If you look at it, you'll find that the ocean temperature has actually rise from 0.6 to 1.2 degrees from the turn of the century to up to the 1930s. Okay. Anyways, the point is that I have 2 articles here, and I've had a tape at home from Ivan Browning, who was the founder of the hydrogen bomb. Anyways, they all were they're all in agreement that the Earth goes through cycles.
Yep.
You know about this?
Temperatures go up, temperatures go down. Most of that warming that they're talking about, and we're talking about, a half a degree or less, took place before the 1940s, before all of our energy emissions took place. And the atmospheric temperatures I was talking about, taken from the satellites and from the balloons, is much more accurate than those taken on the ground, and it's showing a cooling.
You're saying the atmospheric temperatures is actually a better indication? Because all of the scientists that I've talked to on the internet and stuff, they're saying that the ocean temperatures is the temperature
Ocean
you want to
temperature
use.
is a key thing, but the real accurate ones that they're taking now from the satellites and from the balloons are more accurate, and they're showing a cooling. We're talking here either way less than a degree.
Well, over the cycles, it goes up to actually the top levels of the cycles have gone up to 4-degree temperature changes. And
there is no global warming. I mean, period.
I agree. There is
Right.
global warming. I'm sorry. There is global warming. I don't agree that man is doing it. Man is not doing it.
Okay.
You might want to read.
In support of what he was saying, or not in support necessarily, something of interest. Those who follow this kind of statistic, I follow statistics all the time. Global warming as we know it, and all the statistics were taken, for those of you who went to airports when you were kids, all the aerology gear was around the tarmacs. They had abnormally high readings. At the same time now, using satellites, they're minuscule, they're accurate right to the T. It's been less than 1/10 of a degree over the last 25 or 35 years. There is no global warming at all.
No.
Item number 2, I was questioning on the subject of global warming. Would there be much contribution to global warming if we were to burn Al Gore at the stake?
If you're what?
If we burned Al Gore at the stake.
I would. That's one I'd pay for.
One other item is, in use of statistics, do you have available from your data the statistics you were giving where we can get the sources for backup?
I've got it. Yeah.
Okay, you make it available?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned this Heidelberg Appeal. Can we get a copy of that, or the list of scientists involved in that? Where do I find that?
I got the information from Dr. Fred Singer, and in fact, someone suggested to me the other day I need to put that on my website, and I'm going to do that when I get back. So we'll put that on our website.
Okay, I'd be very interested in that. And one more thing, this idea that we can know what the measurements were for all the oceans around the world back 150 years is pretty poor idea. What you're really finding out is what were the temperatures at a given time, in a given decade, in a particular area. And we know that these currents vary from time to time, both in their strength, their temperature, their direction. And we know that some of these temperatures we're depending upon for this idea of global warming were taken by somebody who dropped something into the water 150 years ago from a sailing ship.
Yeah.
And we can't even be sure he wrote it down right. So that's pretty flimsy evidence.
We have evidence that back in the Middle Ages that there was a short ice age at one point, and then there's another point of another warming period. It goes up, it goes down. That's natural. But these clowns are trying to panic our nation, and there's only one purpose behind this, only one purpose whatsoever, and that is to panic us into voluntarily giving away our liberty, the sanction of the victim, to give away our liberty for some kind of a holocaust that doesn't exist. And that's why I'm so angry. If this were real, I'd be helping them.
Evening, Tom. Earl Board. Unless I'm rudely mistaken in my data, the greenhouse gas that they say is the predominant beast that we're fighting here is carbon dioxide.